EU elections have shifted the European Parliament to the right as hard-right MEPs make significant gains. Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo has announced his resignation to King Philippe.
Brussels business representatives celebrate the centre-right victory in the European elections.
The Ukraine Recovery Conference chairman resigns one day before the event in Berlin in a bitter row with Kyiv.
Hard-right MEPs won significant support from voters at the 2024 European election over the weekend. The results have rocked the continent and traditional power bases across Europe, forcing President Emmanuel Macron to call a snap election in France and Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo to resign. In Germany, support for Olaf Scholz's centre-right Social Democrats also sank behind the extreme-right Alternative for Germany, which surged into second place. According to fresh data published by the European Parliament, the centre-right has been reinforced, the far-right parties made gains, while Greens, Socialists and Liberals lost. Despite major upsets in France, Germany and Belgium, and Liberal Renew Group and the Greens suffering painful losses, the makeup of the European Parliament remains largely unchanged. But an opposite swing has occurred in Hungary, with the new self-proclaimed centrist Tisza party winning a landslide of votes and coming in tightly behind Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán's right-wing Fidesz party. Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo has visited King Philippe at the Royal Palace to announce the resignation of his government. The King must now consult political figures and begin the procedure for forming a new federal government. De Croo's resignation follows his party, the Open Flemish Liberals and Democrats, crushing defeat in Belgium's regional, national and EU elections on Sunday. The right-wing New Flemish Alliance Party emerged as the biggest winner at the national level, with nearly 20% of the vote. While the far-right anti-immigration Vlaams Belang Party came in second position with a vote share of 17.5%. De Croo's party, meanwhile, received less than 7% of the vote, leaving it lagging well behind the far left. But speaking after the results, Prime Minister De Croo remained positive about the future of his party.
Beste vrienden, wij liberalen, wij zijn strijdvaardig. En we zijn weerbaar. En ik ben ervan overtuigd, wij zullen er opnieuw staan. Ik heb de voorbije weken ongelooflijk veel jong talent gezien. En ik ben op dat gebied bijzonder hoopvol. Wij, beste vrienden, wij zullen er opnieuw staan. Beste vrienden, we will be back. Sterker dan ooit. Dank u wel.
De Croo's visit to the palace will be followed by a meeting with the presidents of the House and Senate. Consultations will then begin with the first series of party presidents.
Top European AfD candidate Maximilian Krah has been ousted from the newly elected European Parliament delegation, which is now to be led by René Aust. Krah has been excluded as the AfD seeks to rejoin the ID group in Brussels after Marine Le Pen suggested expelling the AfD for being too extreme.
Der Standort Deutschland erodiert im internationalen Vergleich. Wir sind nicht mehr wettbewerbsfähig. Die Menschen haben Angst um ihre Zukunft, weil die Politik keine Antworten mehr geben kann auf die drängendsten Fragen dieser Zeit.
CDU emerged as the winning party on Sunday night, but the AfD performed particularly well amongst young voters. Political scientist Dr. Antonio Souris says part of the AfD's success can be attributed to their successful social media campaign.
What the governing parties could change is that they try to not compete with each other in the media and in public. I mean, this is something Germans in general don't like. They don't like this competition in the media or fighting in the media, what the parties did. And also they must think about policy solutions to problems. I think it's getting to be more important. It's getting more important for them to explain their policies, especially for the Chancellor himself to explain policies to the Germans and to explain his stances. But of course, it will be very tough because you have the state elections coming up. Don't look that good for the governing parties.
Despite the Social Democrats' historic defeat at the European elections, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has ruled out calling an early snap election. AfD co-chair Alice Weidel said the party has set its sights on becoming the new ruling government at the 2025 federal elections next year. Liv Stroud in Berlin for Euronews.
Italian citizen Ilaria Salis will be released from detention in Hungary thanks to her election as an MEP. The 40-year-old teacher spent 15 months in jail after being accused of assaulting far-right demonstrators in Hungary. She's facing up to 20 years behind bars. However, she always maintained her innocency. The case made the headlines after the woman appeared in court handcuffed and chained. Following a public outcry, Rome summoned the Hungarian ambassador and eventually obtained Salis be moved to house arrest. The woman has been elected with the Green and Left Alliance party and will be able to be released thanks to MEP immunity.
Neste palco, aqui atrás de mim, o primeiro-ministro Luís Montenegro e o cabeça de lista Sebastião Bugalho reconheceram que a coligação atualmente no governo em Portugal, a coligação de centro-direita AD, falhou o objetivo de ter mais votos do que o Partido Socialista, liderado nestas eleições europeias pela antiga ministra da Saúde, Marta Temido. O PS teve uma vitória apenas relativa, com mais um eurodeputado do que a AD. De realçar também a entrada, pela primeira vez na história, da extrema-direita portuguesa no Parlamento Europeu. No entanto, para o partido Chega, esta foi um resultado também aquém das expectativas, com apenas 2 eurodeputados eleitos. Os liberais também entram pela primeira vez no Parlamento Europeu, os liberais portugueses, com a iniciativa liberal a eleger 2 eurodeputados. Ricardo Figueira, Euronews, Lisboa.
A pan-European organisation representing European business and labour community celebrated that the centre has held in the European Parliament after Sunday's election. They say that the previous Parliament's Green Deal could be reassessed. According to Eurochambers, the EU needs to overcome its weaknesses compared to the US and China in critical areas, namely manufacturing and clean technology.
And we've had a lot of concerns with the amount of legislation that the Green Deal has led to. It implies a lot of burdens for businesses, a lot of compliance and reporting burdens. So one of our strong messages to the new members of the European Parliament and the new institutions is that we need to slow down before we start bringing in possible new legislation.
Eurochambers told Euronews they advocate for a strong single market in order for a more autonomous European Union.
We need to tackle those fundamental structural challenges that businesses are encountering, particularly manufacturing sectors. Energy costs, access to raw materials, access to supplies in general.
Unions representing workers' interests across Europe stressed during the campaign that the cost of living needs to be a priority. The election results show that the Left and Green parties have declined in the current parliament, but there is still a good majority to advance the EU's social agenda and welfare model.
So most important, no deals with the far right. That's the most important, that they can't be trusted. And at every single opportunity in the past, they voted against working people and their interests.
Migration also dominated the far-right electoral campaign.
Migrant workers are very often the victims of exploitation by unscrupulous employers. We need to make sure that all workers are covered by fair terms and conditions of employment, that all workers, no matter where they're from or who they are or what jobs they do, they can join a union and that they can bargain for a fair wage.
When it comes to renewing the Green Deal, the European Trade Union Confederation advocates for more social investment and a new EU Just Transition Directive.
Berlin is preparing to host a new leg of the Ukraine Recovery Conference, the first one hosted in an EU country. This time around, the event is taking place in a tense atmosphere. On Monday, conference chairman Mustafa Nayem announced his resignation, citing systemic obstacles preventing him from performing his duties effectively. In a Facebook post, he took aim at the Ukrainian government, lamenting budget cuts and bureaucratic impediments. The final straw, he said, was the cancellation of his trip to Berlin by the Ukrainian government. The Ukraine Recovery Conference brings together heads of government and state to mobilize international support for the reconstruction and modernization of the war-ravaged country. This year, the event will be immediately followed by the Ukraine Peace Summit, which will be taking place in Switzerland on the weekend.